What's up everyone, welcome to another video. Today I wanted to teach you guys how to play Mech against Zerg perfectly in 2022. The last time I did this kind of guide was, I think 2 years ago. I think even the second video on my channel is when I pretty much made a Mech guide. Now obviously a lot has changed. Maru here himself has invented a lot of new tricks for Mech in TVZ. And I wanted to show you guys, yeah, like I said, how to play Mech perfectly now. Now this game is from Mech Valencia. If you guys don't know who Maru and Rainer are, Maru is the best Terran in the world. He has been for a few years. Probably the best Terran of all time even, and Rainer is a 3-time back-to-back global finalist, 1-time world champion, so this is pretty much the highest level matchup you can get. Now I'm going to be showing you guys this game from Maru's POV because it is a little bit of a POV analysis, but I also just want to teach you guys, like I said, how to play Mech perfectly, so you guys can go out on the ladder and try it yourself. Now here we go. He's going to start with an SCV scout. Obviously it was a barracks first. Before the gas, and then he's going to go for an expansion. The start of this game is Maru just playing a very standard Hellion 3cc, and no matter what build you play, or what style you want to play with Terran, I should say, this is how you start. Going for a triple CC off of 1 gas with Hellions is completely standard. You can survive everything with this build. Now, the reason why the SCV scout is important is, like you see, a lot of people would be tempted to go into the main and see how much gas they have and stuff, but the only thing you really want to know is if it's a hatch first or not. If it's a hatch first, you can continue with your build completely undisturbed. If it is a pull first, you might want to make some adaptations like getting a second marine and going into the main to see how much gas he has. Now he's going to go for the factory. Let's see. And when it comes to the Reaper micro, if you're a really fast player like Maru, you can, you know, pretty much do harassment 100% of the time while not messing up your build. If you're not fast enough, that's actually no problem at all. One tip I would recommend is to use your Reaper actively. And if you reach a point where you need to focus at home to do something like make your third CC or make your factory or whatever, just send your Reaper a little bit further back so you don't have to worry about it dying while you do something. That's pretty much how you multitask if you don't quite have the APM to do everything. And this is not like a solution for worse players or anything. Even pro players will use this because, trust me guys, even pro players cannot do literally everything at once, right? So now when you have the minerals, you drop down a third CC. Oh, by the way, if you guys are wondering, what the hell is this map? Why is it beautiful and why can I not play on it? Well, this is a tournament map and Blizzard is very slow at implementing maps on the ladder, so you'll get to play this map at some point, maybe not yet. So just for to clarify, on this map you have this little back expansion. You can make the expansion here. Obviously on other maps you don't have that. In that case you would just make it in your main and fly it over to the third base. Then after the third CC you get a starport and a second gas, and then you make the Hellions. This is all completely normal. Now up until this point, like I said, this is what the build looks like. If you want to play Bio, if you want to do Viking, Liberator, doesn't matter what you want to do. Up until this point is exactly what the build looks like. This is a standard 3cc. And this is when it starts getting different, because Maru wants to go into Mech. He's going to make a 325 third gas. Now, when it comes to the scouting, the first important part was scouting the hatch first. Then after that, you want to see the third hatch. Now, in Maru's case, this is one thing about copying pro players, by the way, guys. These tournaments have like a lot of mind games. In this case, Maru didn't even check for it, but at pro level, there is no way someone will not have this. But on your own ladder games, you probably want to check if the third hatch is actually there. And then the follow-up scout, also something Maru doesn't do. Here you can actually see the level of mind games because 4 minutes is the scouting timing I always recommend to scout for roaches. So what I do is usually at like 3:15 to 3:30 when link speed finishes, I will hide the Reaper somewhere here or maybe here. And at 4 minutes, I will jump into the main and try to get a scout on the natural. So you can see if there's gases here and a roach warren. If there's no gases and no roach warren, that is probably all fine. There might nothing else be to scout for. As long as there is a third hatch. If there's no third hatch, you would want to scout earlier because, like, what the hell is going on? But here you can see Maru is so confident Rainer is not doing anything like that. He's not even scouting for it. But don't be fooled. If you don't scout a roach all in and you play like this, you are probably going to die. So if you don't know your ladder opponents, if you're not particularly greedy, please scout for it. So Maru went for a Viking, followed up by a fusion core. Now, one thing I like about Mech is that you can actually do a lot of different openers. You can go for a mine drop, you can go for a Hellion run by, maybe like a Hellbed attack, and then into Mech. And the reason why you can do that better with Mech than with Bio is because with Bio, you need your stim and combat shields to make your units useful. So if you don't get those in time, your build order just kind of sucks a little bit. But with Mech, you can actually transition a bit later. One of the only things you really have to do with Mech is go for battlecruisers. Because without battlecruisers, you simply cannot really defend attacks properly, and particular swarm hosts become impossible. So even if you do it open with a mine drop or whatever, you have to go for a BC after. Now, roughly around the time the battlecruiser starts, he starts the 4th gas. By the way, if you want to look at this replay a little bit more slowly, I'll make sure to post the replay in the description. I'm going to try to explain everything he does so you guys understand why he does it and maybe help you play a little bit better. But if you want to watch the replay and look at the build at your own speed, make sure to download the replay. If I forget to post it, it's in ESL SE2's Twitter. So there you can find it if I do forget to post it, which could happen. If I do forget that, make sure to call me a silly goose in the comments. If you do enjoy the content, by the way, guys, these days I upload every single day. I upload a lot of funny videos and sometimes educational. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't miss out on any of those. Now, the timings work as followed. You get your battlecruiser, and then you get your extra factories. Now, one thing that's slightly weird about this is that this pocket base, you can take it fast. Maru's mineral count is a little bit better than normal because he has this pocket base, so he was able to build a CC on location. But he doesn't have a 6th gas, which kind of sucks. Normally, you have slightly less minerals, but you will be able to take your gases faster. So instead of taking this 5th gas, you would actually take both of your gases pretty much, because you do need a lot of gas. After the 2 factories, Maru is going to get the 2 armories up. Now, with the Hellions, to give you guys a tip for how to use your Hellions safely, you can pretty much always go out on the map because Hellions beat a lot of links. As long as you don't AFK on creep. Like you see, Maru is very active. It's a similar thing with, like I said, with the Reaper. If you don't have the APM to be active non-stop with your Hellions, just send them back a little bit and rest while you actually make your buildings. Now, one more tip before I go. If you want to move out with your Hellions safely, make sure you have the wall up first. If you move without a wall, move out without a wall, and 20 links get in, you don't have your Hellions at home, you could lose the game then and there. So you can send out half of your Hellions until you have the wall finished, and then you can actually send them all out. Now, as soon as the battlecruiser finishes, you teleport it across. This is a pretty crucial part. One thing about playing Zerg that's very important is that you never want to leave Zerg alone. If you leave Zerg alone, they will get too much money, they will snowball, and the game is going to be incredibly hard. And I think this pretty much goes at any level. I've coached a lot of people in Diamond and Masters, and if they leave the Zerg alone, they do tend to kind of get ruined in a little bit. So there's 2 exceptions. The only times you wouldn't send your battlecruiser across is if your opponent, for example, does not have a fast 3rd base. Because then it could be either a Spire. If there's a Spire, if the Spire is done by the time your BC teleports, they will make units, and your battlecruiser will die, and it's a terrible start. You do not want to lose your battlecruiser that early. And similar to if they're all-inning you with roaches, you want to keep your battlecruiser at home to defend. If you teleport your battlecruiser across, even if the roaches are still at home, they can reactively send the roaches across, and like you can see, you're not going to have tanks yet to deal with it. So if it is anything kind of weird, like a fast Spire or roaches, it is better to fly your BC across and then teleport it back. So now you can see, after starting 1-1, we get a 4th command center. Now, on this map, I have to say, it is a little bit easier to get a 4TC greedy, because it is an easy camp map and you have the back natural. On other maps, you might have to play a little bit more safe. And in general, Maru is the perfect defensive player. Like, I would call Maru the best late game player ever. And he gets away with more stuff than other Terrans would. So if you feel like you need to make a few more defenses before expanding, that is totally fine. Like, Maru is literally living on the edge, and he knows how to do it perfectly, so he gets away with it. Now, keep in mind, the Yamato was not very fast. Yamato is not a super expensive upgrade, but you're usually very gas tight. You can see Maru has only 200 gas now. So make sure you get your tank production going and your 1-1 before you get Yamato, okay? Because Yamato, I think, is 150 gas, but if you get 150 gas, you probably will not be able to make your 1-1, and it's going to make the game a little bit tougher. Now, Rainer here is going for Swarm Host, but the response is always the same. If you guys are wondering why is he making Siege Tanks and not Cyclones, it's because you cannot defend attacks without Siege Tanks. I know Mech is known as a very strong defensive composition, but Mech's main weakness is actually in the first 10 minutes. It is really hard to defend stuff without Stin Marines. If, like, Lynx get on top of these tanks, if Roaches close the distance, Hellions and Hellbats are really not gonna do all that. So you see, Maru's taking his 4th base. Once again, guys, Maru made this in Orbital. If you don't feel like you can defend your base with an orbital, just make it a planetary fortress. It really is okay. You're gonna get your gases up. Now, one thing that is very important is that he's getting turrets and an eBay. Or well, eBay and then turrets. Even if you play against a more standard comp, because Swarmos are really good against Mech, but another composition Zergs could typically play is like Roach Corruptor. Against Roach Corruptor, you also want to be making turrets, so getting the eBay is very important. And even if you're taking the game a little bit slower, so let's say you don't have the 4th base yet, you're on 3 base, you know, the macro is not perfect, so maybe you're still on 3 base. It's also perfectly fine to make turrets in your 3 bases instead of on your 4th base to survive. There you can see he's gonna get 2-2 up. He gets Blue Flame. Blue Flame is actually normally not necessary super fast, but if you play against Swarm Host, you must have Blue Flame, else the Locust will just absolutely ravage you. He's getting a Sensor Tower at his 4th base. Now, once again, this map is a little bit different because you have the in-base over here, but normally you would get this Sensor Tower at your 4th or 3rd base instead. Now, you see the Locusts are coming in. Look how he moves the Hellbat to counter the Locust. You have to follow the Locust. What happens here if you A-move is your Hellbats are going to walk towards the Queens and the Locusts will drop on your tanks and destroy them. So you have to follow the Locusts with your Hellbats. Now, in Mech versus Zerg, if you ever get to like a really healthy tank count, I can actually play the game because the Swarmos need to recharge anyway. If you ever get to a healthy tank count of, let's say, 9 or 10, you can actually consider adding some Cyclones to like pick off the Swarmos. Some of you guys are probably wondering, why is he not making Cyclones? If your tank count ever gets too low, you cannot defend the waves. So against Swarmos, like Raynor is going to use them very well together with the Queens. He keeps picking off a few tanks, which means Maru has to rebuild them. If he wouldn't lose the siege tanks, you can totally make a few Cyclones to actually attack the Queens and stuff. But for now, he has to keep making tanks. And Mech these days, guys, Mech is a very defensive composition. So the aim here is to trade very efficiently and get to the late game. The fact that Maru spin back, you can see the supply is very low. This is all fine. I want you guys to know that Mech against Zerg, until the late game, you are supposed to be down in supply and down in muddy. Now, when the late game comes closer, you definitely want to be closer in bank and supply. But here, this supply is totally fine. Now, Maru's going to go across with his BCs. This is definitely a move you can do if there's no Corruptors on the map. But it could be a little bit risky. You can also defend the Swarmos with them. But keep in mind, they have the teleport, so this is basically free damage. The only thing you need to be really careful is Infestors, because a Fungal, Neural, they will actually kill your BCs. But because he has the teleport, he's just going to do some free damage and then teleport out. It was a little bit late, so he loses one. Even Maru makes mistakes, guys. And make sure to always keep your Hellbats with the tanks. Another tip I can give with Mech that sounds very straightforward, but people, in my coaching, I still see people not do it, is you actually have to be sieged all the time. If you ever get caught unsieged, your army sucks, okay? Straight up. Like, if you fight unsieged or you siege too late, like, if you siege after they go in, it's already too late and you're probably gonna get destroyed. Now, you see, Maru has held the defense a lot, and now he's starting to make Cyclones. He's also getting a lot of bases up, and he's going up to 8 factories. Before, he had 5 factories. Now he's going to go up to 8. This is actually very important so you can reinforce. He's getting his 3-3. Well, right now he doesn't even have the gas for the 3rd armor upgrade, sorry. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Raynor is putting an insane amount of pressure here, and like I said, he could potentially be the best Zerg player in the world even, at least one of them. So Maru is struggling a lot more on the defense. It is very likely that if you get your defense up properly, the game is going to go way smoother. And if you purely try to copy a game like this, you might feel awkward, like, why am I not getting pressured as hard? Just make sure to keep going. Like I said, if you get enough tanks, you can start making Cyclones. And here comes the cool thing with Mech, guys, that has been found out recently, I want to say in the last year, or maybe year and a half, is that you go for Mech into Ghost, and that kind of makes up for your ultimate army composition. Notice how Maru also gets a lot of SCVs with his Mech, especially if your opponent is trading Swarmos all the time, you want to be able to reinforce. So he gets a lot of SCVs, and normally you could consider a mistake. In this scenario, is totally fine. Now here, he actually doesn't have a lot of siege tanks, so this wave might hurt a little bit more. Actually, there's not enough roaches yet. I think that's what Maru caught on to, by the way. Normally, with Swarm Hosts, there are Ravagers. I think Maru realized the fact that there were actually no roaches or Ravagers with it, so he could make Cyclones instead, because that's what you want the tanks for. Tanks kill Banelings, Roaches, Ravagers. if there's only queens and links, I guess you don't really need those as much. Those, you always want to have some tanks to kill queens at least, right? Now, if you look at the units lost, normally this looks way better for Terran, but this is a swarm host game, which means, excuse me, that the efficiency is going to be a little bit better for Raynor. Now, another thing that's really hard to deal with Mech is Niduses, especially the ones in the main. Now, so far, I think I missed a few Niduses, by the way, but so far Maru has defended it perfectly by reacting in time. I'm going to be very honest and say that you guys will probably not always react in time. I think even in my games, I don't manage to react in time at some point, right? So an easier way to deal with Niduses is to just leave one tank kind of in the middle of your base. If you leave one tank here, it usually covers all the spots where I put a Nidus. Now, this map is a little bit more difficult because it has a back base. You would need another tank here and another tank here. But usually 2 tanks, 1 here and 1 in the natural is enough to stop those Niduses. And even if you have 2 tanks less at the front, trust me that it's better than having an entire army in your base and dying immediately. So now you can see Maru's going for the Ghost. I know as maybe like traditional Mech fans, this might be a little bit hard to understand, but Mech's late game is not that good against Zerg spellcasters. Ooh, a little bit of a mistake here by Maru. Mech late game is not that good against Zerg spellcasters, so you need Ghost. And when you get Tank Thor Ghost, Terran's late game is very, very strong. So this is actually the ultimate place. Now, okay, let's wait for this wave. As you can see, Maru has the entire game has been good with his Hellbats. He never left his tanks alone. If you ever do leave your tanks alone, you're actually going to be in trouble too. So I said it a few times, but keep making sure to pay attention to it. Now, this is actually an important move. It seems very small, but I want to highlight it. Usually... Oh, wait, I should clarify another thing. Usually, you do not want to make more than 3 battlecruisers, okay? The battlecruisers, I know they're very cool units, and they have Yamato, and in theory, they kill units for free. If you get more than 3 battlecruisers, they're not that good anymore. They will cost too much supply. If you have 6 BCs, that's 36 supply. And in the fights against Corruptors, Infestors, BCs are not that great. So usually, you don't make more than 3. The only scenario in which you make more than 3 is actually when you play against Swarm Hosts, like right now. Because Swarm Hosts are basically the same. In case you guys didn't know, Swarm Host is insanely heavy in supply. So if you make BCs, it's actually fine because as you can see, the Zerg's army is also pretty small. It's basically the Locust wave with 20 Banelings and 10 Roaches all the time. So against Swarmers, you can actually make more BCs as well, but usually you want to stick to just 3 because else your actual army is going to be too small. Now here, Maru's going to go for 5 racks Ghost. I want to mention one more time that Maru's macro is obviously pretty much perfect. Usually, I find it more realistic to afford 3 racks Ghost myself, but if your macro is really that good, or if you're just left alone and your economy is booming on 93 SCVs, you can actually go for 5 racks Ghost. Now, there's one more decision to be made here, and that decision is whether you want to go single or double eBay. You can actually totally fine just make 1 eBay and get only the armor upgrades for the Ghost, because the Ghosts are mostly about the snipes anyway. But Maru gets double upgrades, so if you really want to play that perfect Maru formula style, then you should go for the double upgrades as well. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but that's also why I really like using Maru for like guide videos, like how to play Mech, because Maru is the kind of player that always just figures out the perfect way to play. Like when Maru has his late game figured out, all his transitions are just perfect, and it's just beautiful. Now let's see what his army composition is gonna be now. Yeah, there's something I need to mention as well. Like, the thing is, it's really hard to make a Mech guide from just one game because there are a lot of different responses. If this was not a Swarmos game, Maru would be making Thors already. Because Thors are really a big part of the perfect late game, because you need to have them against Broodlords. Now, because of the Swarmos, once again, Raynor's army is just never gonna be that big. So he's totally fine not making Thors. Like, a Broodlord Infestor army is only scary if it's a lot of Broodlords and a lot of Infestors. Besides that, it's not that scary. So Maru is actually not making any Thors yet. You know, I said you could make single or double eBay, but Maru is actually going to go for 4 eBays. I guess he made them because he thought the Locust would kill his eBays, but it's still pretty funny. Now, the army composition... Oop, messing up my hotkeys a bit. Maru is going for is basically Tank Ghost. And he just wants a few Hellbats. Here you can see he's using the battlecruisers very well to hunt the Swarmos, by the way. Notice how he splits his army. He has the Ghost going towards the top, and the battlecruisers hunting the Swarmos on the left side. Now, I do want to mention that the lower the MMR, the more is possible. So for top level play like these guys, I think what Maru is doing is the only way to really play mech. You have to play a very passive game with Ghost. Now, if you're slightly lower MMR, and I'm not talking about like bronze players or anything like this, like even if you're like low Grandmaster, Master Diamond, a lot more is possible. And if you want to, you can totally do some more aggressive mech timings. You could copy this exact same build, but instead of going for the Ghost late game, you can actually hit a really nice 2-2 mech timing. If you have a good early game, you killed a bunch of drones, you can totally go for that. And there's a lot more possible, so if you don't want to necessarily play this super drawn out late game every time, try some timing, see what works. Now, I would definitely recommend to wait for 2-2, but because by the time you have 1-1, your mech army is just not complete. It's gonna be like a few tanks and a few Hellions, and you'll basically get cleaned up by one wave of Locust or some Ravagers, so I would definitely wait for 2-2. Now here you see, Maru is going for the Thors. Notice that he lost a bunch of SCVs, and at this point he's not remaking them. Because right now, the economy phase of the game is almost over. If you're on six bases as a mech Terran, you're very content. If you're wondering about the rules for the economy, typically if the bases are even, let's say it's, I'm not sure how many bases this map has, it's probably 9 versus 9 or 8 versus 8. If the bases are even, it's typically good for Terran because Terran has a bit more efficiency. If Zerg is one base up, so let's say this base never gets mined and Zerg mines this base, it's pretty even. If Zerg gets 2 bases up or more, so Zerg gets both the corner bases, it's gonna be good for Zerg. So basically your goal here, if you want to go for that really drawn out late game, is to just split the map in half. If you ever deny an extra base from the Zerg, it's gonna be really good for you. Now once again, this is a move out Maru is doing, because he was playing against Swarm Host. Normally 18 minutes into the game, Zerg might already have a ton of Lurkers or like a million Banelings or Broodlord Infestor. And then Maru would probably not do these move outs. But because he was playing against Swarm Host and he knows Rainer's army is not going to be that good, he's actually going to do this move out. Now if you do these move outs with Mech, usually, like I said, the goal is to split the map. What you want to do is kill the base and back off. One thing that's very scary about Zerg is that Zerg can basically make... Wow, he's actually sniping me the Overlords. Zerg can basically make a million units at once. So if you push a few bases and you think, oh, now I can push to the middle, it's very likely the Zerg is going to be maxed with Banelings, Infestors, Lurkers, and they will roll your army. So you typically want to play it safe, kill the base, and then back off. Now, another thing that's really important for Terran late game, guys, is that you make a lot of command centers. As you see, I don't know how many he has exactly. He has 6 orbitals and 2 planetaries, and is going to make 2 more. Sol, one of my favorite late game Terrans in Europe, always says that you need to get the 8 orbitals and then you're going to win the game. Ooh, that's a pretty nasty fungus. The Ranger's going to go in, but Maru's army is so good it's probably not going to matter that much. Yeah, exactly. You do have to be careful with that, by the way. Ghost, they seem really good, but if you ever walk like too confidently up a ramp, Banelings will destroy your Ghost. Maru, obviously, insanely good player and he's super confident in his control, but it's totally fine to play a little bit more scared, maybe like scan ahead a little bit more, siege your tanks, make some turrets. Now, one mistake I actually think Maru is making is that he lost the Raven and never rebuilt it. Now, I mentioned that it was important before, I didn't explain why. The main reason why Raven is important is because Terran's main source of detection is a scan. And you see he has a scan here, but it's always possible that there's a few infestors, like let's say he has a few burrowed infestors snarking here from the high ground. He would neuro those 4 BCs and the 4 BCs are dead. Now the BCs at this point are not the biggest problem, but if he would neuro 4 Thors, you could actually get absolutely obliterated in the fights, because just imagine what 4 Thors do against 20 Ghosts. 4 Thors will kill all of your own Ghosts. So the Raven kind of makes sure you never lose because you accidentally don't have detection. So just to make it easier, I would just have a 1 Raven. And if you're struggling to control it, literally, right-click it on your siege tank and it will follow it forever. Take it out of your hotkey, and that way, you know, you're probably not going to lose it. Now, let's look at Maru's ultimate composition once again. Maru has 15 Ghosts. He still has the 4 BCs left. I think ideally, he wouldn't have those. But at this point, they're still getting value for him, so why not, right? But he has 15 Ghosts, 4 Thors, and 7 tanks. I think ideally, he loses these 4 BCs, and he adds a few more Thors and a few more Hellbats. Then I think his army would really be perfect. Potentially, you could make some Liberators as well. Now, Once again, Maru is walking up a ramp here. This is a move I would actually not make. Like, Maru really knows the limits of his army, how to control it. Personally, I would siege here, kill this base, go around, kill these bases again, and then you're just gonna win eventually. Here, it is possible that you take a terrible fight up a ramp and you get annihilated, and then you're gonna be very sad. Like, here it was very close to the Banelings actually getting on top of the Ghost, and it would have been a tough time. Now, let's see, Maru's gonna back off here. As you can see, pretty much what I said, he's remaxing by making mostly Thors because it's a lot of Brute Lords. The biggest thing you need to be careful of is Infestors. Like, this army looks unbeatable when Maru plays with it, but as you're gonna try it out, you're probably gonna have a few rough losses, and it's mostly gonna be because of Infestor usage. If your Ghosts get fungled, in case you guys didn't notice, by the way, damage cancels snipe. If you have like a million snipes going off on Brute Lords, it looks amazing. But one fungal stops all the snipes and then all your Ghosts might die. It actually can happen in the blink of an eye. So don't be fooled by how easy Maru makes it look very often. You need to be very careful with this Ghost. And not just that, Neuros against Thors would kill you, Neuros would kill your BCs. So against Infestors you're going to have the most problems. And you also need to be careful against just Banelings. Like, you don't want to have your Ghosts just wandering around aimlessly, because then they might get caught by Banelings and it's rough. So you typically want to have your Thors in the front and always scanning ahead so you can see if there's burrowed Infestors. Now, the way you counter the Infestors is if it's just one, you can go for a snipe with one Ghost. Make sure you don't club your Ghost. You can just send one forward and snipe. If it's a lot of Infestors, you can just EMP. You can get the EMP enhanced upgrade in your Ghost Academy, which basically, I don't know, where's the Ghost Academy? There it is. We can basically, I think it makes your EMP almost twice as big, and then you can really get a lot of Infestors at once. One tip I can give you guys that's very important, I feel like people don't realize this. EMP does not drain all the energy, okay? If you EMP a full energy Infestor once, it still has a fungal. So if there's a clump of Infestor, make sure to EMP it at least twice so you actually drain the energy. Oh, this is actually a pretty crazy fight. He wanted to go for Yamatos and snipes at the same time. The way Maru is taking this fight is pretty much perfect. He was like spread on the low ground. He's not walking up here. He was just taking the fight from there. And you see, Raynor has to be very careful with his Infestors. If these get EMP'd, you can actually walk forward. If there's Infestors with energy, I would almost never walk forward. Like, really make sure you get rid of the Infestors, EMP them, because Fungals on top of this ramp would actually be devastating. And I'm gonna repeat myself, do not be fooled by how easy Maru makes it look, because if he walks up this ramp, he might just get absolutely annihilated, you know. So Maru's gonna go for nukes. I know nukes are very popular amongst my YouTube fans, but the way Maru does nukes, I feel like it's the most legit. I feel like he makes 1 or 2 Ghost Academies at most, and he just launches occasional nukes when it's actually a good idea. Against good Zergs like Raynor, launching a nuke, it will pretty much almost never hit, and it will cost you 100 plus potentially the Ghost, which is very expensive once you start going to that late game. Oh, this is a potentially dangerous scenario. Wait, I think Maru might be lucky here. Oh, Raynor did not upgrade Neural Parasite. Maru was supposed to lose all of these Thors, but Raynor actually does not have Neural Parasite upgraded, I believe. So that's why he got away with that. But yeah, be very careful, guys, because that was one of those moments where 30 supply of your army would just get wiped off the map if he has Neural Parasite upgraded. Now, as I was saying, well, I actually forgot what I was talking about. I was saying something about Maru, obviously. Oh yeah, about the nukes, right. So you can see the way he uses nukes is usually to cut off an army. He will just use one when he's distracted somewhere else. But he doesn't quite go ahead and throw a million nukes because it's typically a waste of money. I know if you hit a nuke, it's very cool and it's a big highlight and it's, yay, awesome, you know, you'll be very happy. But realistically, only launching a few nukes, usually just 1 academy, maybe 2, is definitely better. And that's the way Maru does it as well. I don't think I've ever seen Maru really spam nukes like crazy. At least not recently against Zerg. Now you can see that Maru, even though he's a bit more aggressive with army than I would recommend you to be, he is still taking the logical approach. He is actually just splitting the map, because Maru knows, even though if Maru takes a good fight right now, if he EMPs this, he probably wins the game because his army is insane. But he's still just going for his win condition, which is splitting the map. And in this case, he's even more than splitting the map. He's actually mining more than Raynor right now. Raynor is going to lose these extractors as well. He lost this base and Maru's going to take this. This base is not in sight. So right now, Maru has a complete lock on the game without having to YOLO across, basically. Now, these PCs, I have to admit, I have not seen BCs be this good in the Mech TVZ for a while. He denied all the Swarm hosts. He got so many Yamatos off, he denied it. So this game makes it look like BCs are good. If you guys want to try it out, definitely go for it. You could probably have some rough games. Maybe it'll be amazing. Just try it out. Typically, remember what I said. I would recommend not more than 3. Those are always going to have value. More than 3, I don't know. Now, in case you guys are wondering, wouldn't a late game battlecruiser switch be good? Late game battlecruiser switches are only good in certain situations. If your opponent refuses to tech to the late game, so he's just stuck on Ravager, Bane, you know, without really making infestors, then BCs are good. If you fight against an Infestor Corruptor, BCs are simply not going to be that good. You can see even here, the battlecruiser didn't trade it amazing despite being mass repaired and under a bunch of turrets. Like, BCs statistically are not that great, but if your opponent doesn't go to the late game and just makes Ravager, Bane, you can totally make 10 BCs and fly around and kill all of his stuff. That is actually a thing you can do. Usually, though, this is the army composition you want to stick to. A bunch of Ghosts with a bunch of Thors and a few Hellbats and tanks. Now, the Hellbats are very important to tank Brootlings. Like, if you have... Oh, this is going to be painful for Raynor. You see, Maru cloaked them so Raynor wouldn't walk away. That's actually a genius move. Well done. I actually want to clap for that. That is very well done. The cloak in advance actually kills pretty much all the Corruptors besides one. That is so painful. And the thing is, even though Corruptors, you would think they might not be that useful at this point because the BCs were almost dead, those could have been all Broodlords as well. And now he doesn't even have money to rebuild them, really. And yeah, like I said, you want Hellbats to deny the Broodlings, because Broodlings, they will block all of your Thors, and your Thors are not going to be able to shoot. But if you have Hellbats, Broodlings, you know, they disappear pretty much instantly, and it allows you to snowball the game back into your favor. Now, Maru's even going to get this base, which is just insane. Maru is going to be the one up in bases, which... you can see it in the money here, by the way, guys, just so you guys know. Even in the late game, Zerg should be up in bank by a little bit. So they're both maxed, but Maru has 2k more minerals and 2.4k more gas. Usually that's the other way around, and then it's pretty even. Like, Zerg wants to be a little bit up in bank. Late game for Zerg is also quite expensive, so it's relatively even. But yeah, if the Terran has this army already... Obviously, it's different when the Terran only has tanks and Hellbats, right? And no Ghosts and stuff. But when he has all the Thors and all the Ghosts, Zerg definitely wants to be up a little bit in bank. And right now is not the case. Now, you see, those infestors, I actually didn't realize it, but they're all EMP. There's one... Actually, where can I see that? Yeah, there's one infestor with energy. As soon as that energy is out, Maru will just streamline across and just kill him, basically. But he's still respecting the one fungal, because even one fungal can ruin your day. And like I said, even just killing one base is fine. Ooh, you might kill it! Oh, no. It looked like he was gonna derp the infestor forward there for a second. So he denies another really important base. You see, he's just reinforcing with Hellbats. He doesn't need more Ghost than this. And also, I think, in case you... Because I see sometimes that people think that Ghost just kind of counters everything. You still don't want to max out on Ghost. Because if you have 40 Ghost, you're never ever going to get all the abilities off, you know. Like 16 Ghost, I want to say like 10, 15, and maybe even a little bit more, like in this case 16, is the perfect amount for Ghost. Because you can actually get all your abilities off. And you're like, if you get fungled with 16 Ghosts or with 40 Ghosts, you're still gonna lose all of them anyway, right? So this composition makes sure to not just fall into a trap and make 100 Ghosts, because then fungals and banelings are gonna give you an absolute nightmare. So you see, here, I'm actually gonna play this fight slowly. You can see Maru is just aiming to get like snipes of Rock Cloaked and EMPs. I think he actually he didn't realize one of the infestors still had an EMP. Now, because they are EMP, there's no energy. And at this point, he's just gonna go for it. You can see, if there's energy left on the infestors, you could never do this, by the way. And you can see it's still pretty difficult, because the Broodlords trade pretty well. But yeah, if there's no energy, you typically just want to go for it. He's lacking a little bit of Hellbats here. If he had like 5 more Hellbats, it would be a really comfortable fight. But he still has a few. And ideally, you have the Ghost behind the Thors, by the way. In that fight right before, Maru had the Ghost in front of the Thors. The Broodlord shot the Ghost, and the snipes weren't able to get off. Obviously, the fungal did a lot of damage. And you see, even though this is not the best fight possible, it's still going pretty well for Maru. He could have totally saved those Thors, but I guess he was afraid of being fungled. Saving those Thors would have been nice. And here you can see, oh my god, the Unistal is actually insane. I didn't expect it to be that bad. Maru is up 21k, which means Raynor has lost 21k resources more. And that is the efficiency that I was talking about. That's why Zerg wants to be 1 or 2 bases up. But in this case, Maru had this base already. This base was denied. This base was denied. How many bases is he up? Let's see, what is that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 against 4? That is actually pretty cheddar. Yeah, it's 4 bases at the end. You can see the income here. It was just like that. So yeah, that is pretty much Maru's perfect formula, guys. The thing you guys will struggle with the most is probably the ghost control in the late game. But as long as you get the early game steps down the build up until like 10 minutes, saturate your 4th base, then everything is fine. Like I said, you can try some other stuff. You can try mech timing with 2-2. But if you want to play mech like the best player in the world, the best Terran in the world, I should say, Maru, the best late game, then this is how it goes. Ghost with mech. Don't get too crazy on the nukes because it costs a lot of money. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick guide. Make sure to like the video if you did, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Adios.